kind of slow down people coming in, and there's no room for them anyway. Okay? Well, I'll start. I'm Tim Bray. I'm the Crow Wing County engineer. Many of you have seen me before at this meeting or others associated with this project and other ones too. First, I'm going to welcome everybody, those that are online. Of course, everybody here is in person. This is super important, and you should really be proud of yourselves, not only for showing up here, but all the comments, reactions, suggestions, good and bad comments or negative comments about things. We need to hear all of that, and so you should be proud of yourselves. I'm happy to see many of the council members here. A couple county commissioners are here tonight to hear the presentations and some of the questions and things. And like I said, first I want to congratulate because it must be hundreds of comments. And one of the reasons why we picked Bolton Mink to do this is because this public involvement process is really important. And they have a tool that online opportunity for you to put a pin on a map and say, this is what I like or don't like about this, or here's the problem that you need to fix. That's generated an unbelievable amount of comments. I've been associated with many projects, and I've never seen a crowd like this for a very long time. And having only this as the platform to generate comments, we only get a handful. So hundreds of comments is pretty awesome. Before we get started, I introduce Jacob, who's going to do the presentation tonight. I just want to do a couple housekeeping. We could be here for 10 hours. I know a lot of you have questions and comments and those things. We're just not going to be able to get to them all. I would encourage you to find our comment cards. I think they're in the back. Those of you online, to type in the chat box your questions and your concerns if you haven't already on our online platform. And we're going to do our best to answer them. What we intended to do was to have all these boards on the side, have a short presentation, kind of stimulate the conversation, and then ask your questions to the staff members about your specific questions. We still would like you to try not, so we don't have a 10-hour question and answer type thing. It is not ideal, I will admit. But to kind of get through the presentation, we're supposed to have another one at 6:30, and to be respectful of those who maybe are just getting off work and are be here at 6:30, we want to have a presentation. And if we have hundreds of questions, we're not going to be able to get to that. So next, I want to just introduce Jacob Bongard. Jacob Bongard is our traffic engineer who has been assigned to this project. He works for Bolton and Mink. He's part of the team with Phil Martin and his group, as you know him as a city engineer. We hired them to do the design, traffic analysis, and things like that. That's where we're at, and the first step is the traffic analysis. We took traffic counts earlier this fall, even over Labor Day, to catch that peak that Cross Lake has been known for, and he'll go into some of that. So he has 16 years of experience, and he's done a lot of the analysis, and he wants to share that with you and tell you where we're at in the process. Jake, you want to take it from there?
All right, we're good to go. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, as Tim mentioned, really the main intent of what I want to get through today is talk through really a project overview. We had some nice boards kind of filtered around the room, but we'll take a little more time as part of this presentation to walk through the project, walk through the analysis that we've done, and talk through some of the alternatives that have been considered as part of the process. So digging right into that. So a project overview, the project partners, so the folks involved with this project. So as Tim mentioned, it is being led by Crow Wing County. We also have involvement from the city of Cross Lake, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is also part of the project team, just helping with the solutions or helping to talk through issues and concerns and working through issues. So just with the west leg being the campground, just making sure that we're being cognizant of all project partners. The project extends. So from an overall project perspective, I think a lot of our discussion with this is going to focus on the intersection, but keep in mind that this does go from really the bridge south of the 3 and 66 intersection all the way up to Bald Eagle Trail, leaving 66, and then from the 3 and 66 intersection, Pioneer Drive. and somebody needs to be muted, Pioneer Drive or CASA 37. So there are more improvements beyond just the intersection. We'll talk about those as well. So to dig in, this isn't the first look at this intersection, first look at the corridor. There was a cross-lake parking and pedestrian route study completed in 2019. And as part of that, the goal was to identify sidewalk locations, pedestrian connections, crossings along the corridor. And that was really the driver of what generated the proposed improvement for the sidewalk and crossing connections that was presented for the transportation alternatives application. So that's that third bullet that I have there that was provided in 2021. So that was submitted and it was awarded $610,000 to the community to implement those sidewalk improvements. So there's a pool of money to do that. So in addition to that work, there was a cross-lake water quality improvement. I'll circle back for it completed in 2021. And it's just improving water quality. So a lot of those recommendations are again going to be reintroduced with this project to make sure whatever improvement is introduced here incorporates as many water quality improvements as we can. The final one is the Eastern Federal Lands Access Program. So that's a grant that was provided for the intersection to provide just safety and operational improvements in conjunction with the National Loon Center. So $850,000 was awarded to the county and city for the improvements of intersection traffic control at that intersection. So there's a pool of money available to make an improvement at the intersection. At a higher level, the project schedule, so as Tim mentioned, we're in the study phase right now, so that's what we'll be talking about. Following this meeting and following the acceptance or I guess agreement on a recommendation, we'll be moving forward to preliminary design and final design really over the next year and a half, and then construction's planned to begin in the spring of 2024. So I have a project considerations map, so really it just shows, and it's back in the corner, happy to talk through it. I could talk a while on this, but I won't. Really what it shows is just the general project area again, just from the bridge up to Bald Eagle Trail, 3 and 66 intersection over to Pioneer Drive. Identifies some of the trail gaps. There isn't a trail or a sidewalk currently along the east side of 66, so identifying that as a potential improvement with this project. And then it just mentions and digs into some of the safety, the crashes that have occurred at the intersection and some of the other project elements, but we'll dig into that as we move forward here. So the overall goals and objectives for the project, so I'll just read this quickly. The objective of the project is to develop a community-supported alternative that fully integrates improvements to pedestrian safety and mobility, intersection operation and safety, and stormwater treatment. The goal is to have all of this completed along in conjunction with the opening of the NLC in 2024. So that includes safety improvements to the 3 and 66 intersection, pedestrian improvements, like I mentioned, along County Road 3 to Pioneer Drive and along 66 to Bald Eagle Trail, and then those stormwater treatment improvements. So some of those additional considerations too that we need to be cognizant of, and it's something we'll dig into, is the construction staging. We fully understand that the County Road 66 improvement had a full closure this past summer. And we will be digging into staging and traffic control at this intersection as a recommendation is selected and is carried forward. I will say that the 3 and 66 intersection does provide more opportunities for local detour routes, business access signings, construction staging, things like that to avoid the full closure and the impact that was felt this year. So that's something that will be considered as we move forward with whatever option is selected and carried forward. So from an existing conditions perspective, I know you've all driven through the intersection a million times probably, but the current speed limit on the road is 35 miles per hour, and something to think about just south of the intersection is 45 miles per hour where it transitions near the bridge. It's a suburban, urban type section, so the curb and gutters there. It has that a little bit more close feel with the businesses and the trees on each side, but south of the intersection, again, south of the bridge area, it is rural. So the intersection itself does serve as somewhat of a transition area between the high-speed rural typical section south of the corridor to the urban lower speed. So it is kind of that precipice, I guess, or that combination between the urban and the rural sections. Currently there is a marked pedestrian crossing on the north and east legs, and an RFB, which is that flashing beacon, the pedestrian activated device, is installed across that north leg to provide notification of pedestrians crossing at the intersection. And as you all know, it's just side street stop control today, so the CASA 3 or County Road 3 approach westbound needs to stop, and the eastbound from the campsite as well. So then moving into our intersection control evaluation, so we wanted to really dig in and understand the existing conditions before we moved into providing recommendations. So with that, we did data collection, and we were able to find data from a 2019 study, school study that was completed. This kind of shows our baseline. And then as Tim mentioned, we did collect counts on a normal Wednesday, so it was an August Wednesday during the summer months, or in August, yeah. And then we also collected data the Saturday of Labor Day weekend as well. So we wanted to make sure that we were really capturing all the different traffic characteristics through the intersection. The summer months we call that our typical condition, that summer Wednesday, just because that is an elongated period up here from really springtime through the fall where there's elevated traffic volumes. But it was interesting to see that with the counts that we had back in September to the ones we did summer, the Wednesday was about 15% greater with that, and then the Labor Day weekend count on that Saturday was about 50% greater than that normal September day. So we do understand there was also a full closure on 66 when we did the count, so we were able to use the September counts to kind of recalibrate ours and make sure we're representing existing traffic counts at the location. From traffic operations perspective, that existing side street stop control that's there today, it functions pretty well, and I think we can all see that when you're driving through the intersection. The north-south doesn't have any stop control, so they can cruise right on through. The westbound approaching from County Road 3 does have they do have to come to a stop clearly. Typically gaps are available for people to pull on, but as you get that Labor Day traffic at times, there can be queues of a few vehicles for people to pull onto the roadway. From a traffic warrant perspective, so that's something we like to look at. It's really how much traffic's going through the intersection, what's the combination of traffic, and whether that warrants the need for an all-way stop or a traffic signal. So this is just kind of a baseline number to look at. We do still need to round it out with the traffic evaluation and look at all the other conditions at the intersection. But this intersection does warrant an all-way stop and a signal based off of existing traffic volumes collected during the summer months. From a vehicle and a pedestrian safety, the intersection itself has observed 3 crashes over the last 5 years, 2 right angle crashes and a rear end. So it's not overly significant. So if you look at how that compares to crashes statewide, it's within the expected range. So that's not really pushing the boundaries of anything. From a pedestrian perspective, there was a crash north of this location, but nothing at the intersection in the previous 5 or 10 years. Forecasting. So we don't want to just look at existing conditions today. We also want to make sure the improvements that we propose handle future traffic and future development and everything and accommodate all the needs long-term for the community. And if you look back to the data previously, over the last 20 years, traffic's been relatively flat in the area. So as we look at traffic growth and what we anticipate in the future, from an overall background growth perspective, we don't expect substantial growth from what's out here today. We do have some minor growth rates, a little bit higher on the east leg, but not a ton of growth out here. And with the future conditions evaluation, we took that analysis and those forecasted volumes and really built that into a model to understand what it would look like. So as I mentioned, existing conditions, the intersection operates well today. We'd expect that to continue to operate well with just some times a day when the side street does have some difficulties pulling on, just when gaps aren't as prevalent during these busier times. So I wanted to talk through the alternatives that we walked through then. So first starting with the do nothing or the side street stop control. And what we see as here is this does not meet the project goals, and what I wanted to hit on a little bit more is the introduction of the National Loon Center being open in 2024. So the exact traffic volumes that are going to be generated on that are a bit unknown, but I think what we do know is it's going to add vehicles to the area and it's going to add pedestrian traffic since parking won't be provided on site for it necessarily. There will be a lot more pedestrians walking through the intersection. So one of the big drivers or key features of this is creating a safe environment for pedestrians and vehicles, but primarily pedestrians to get across the intersection. So the reason that we saw this does not meet project goals is because there's significant support to make long-lasting improvements that emphasize pedestrian safety while meeting the needs of the community both today and well into the future. And while the existing facilities function today, there are some concerns of how that would function with that added pedestrian traffic crossing that movement. The all-way stop as well was identified as not meeting project goals as well. Again, same reason, significant support for long-lasting improvements. And the additional alternatives like a signal or a roundabout just have a higher capacity to accommodate these fluctuations in traffic and also do a better job of accommodating safe pedestrian movements. And one of the concerns with the always stop is just with it being a transition area from the rural high-speed area to the urban, suburban, lower speed area, there isn't a stop sign for miles if you're approaching from the south, that it could be an unexpected condition as people pull up. And while an always stop does a nice job of assigning right away to each of the different directions, if someone's unaware of that stop condition, if it doesn't feel normal to someone approaching that, they could miss it, and that could create an issue with someone thinking they have the right of way crossing or a car thinking they have the right of way when pulling on. So that was the primary concern with the always stop. Then the two other options we looked at is a traffic signal and the roundabout. So the traffic signal, I just want to talk through some details here. So as shown, it's pretty similar to what's out there today. One of the issues or one of the concerns is that existing 60-foot crossing distance of the north leg, just with the shoulder, the left through and right turn lane southbound and the northbound through lane. It's a wide area for people just to cross in one swath. So the button does activate, it lets cars know that someone's coming, but it's a long distance to cross. So what we've introduced here is just some bump outs or curb extensions at the intersection just to lessen that, take 10, 12 feet off that crossing distance and make it so the folks don't need to be into the road as much as they are today. One of the things with this though, it doesn't slow vehicles down necessarily. So you've all driven through signals before. If it's a green light, people are going to continue to go at the same speed. So when we collected traffic data out here, we collected speed data, and the average speed out here was like 37 miles an hour, 36, 37. So people are driving about the speed limit, a little bit over, but they are following the speed limit. So one of the things with the signal too is that speed then is perpetuated north of the corridor or north of the intersection as well. So currently we've heard of a lot of people coming out of the businesses and just crossing 66 at different locations, not necessarily at the intersection. So as we look at speeds northbound through the intersection, they would still be going that 36, 37 miles per hour. The design vehicle, and we'll get into that with the roundabout too, I just want to do some comparisons here. Really no limitations on that. It will accommodate all vehicles. From a traffic operations perspective, we expect it to operate efficiently and move people through pretty well. If you see the existing side street stop, it operates well. We'd expect the signal to operate well as well. Looking at peak conditions, it would manage traffic. We can adjust signal timings to get people through the intersection. I guess the negative with the traffic signal is it does always need to be on. There isn't an option to have it just on during the summer months and deactivate or just put it to flashing in the off-peak conditions. That's just not something that's allowed on a state aid highway. So that would need to function that way. So during these off-peak conditions, and you've all sat at stoplights before where you have a red light and nobody's coming the other direction and you're just parked there. So that would be kind of a condition you'd see during the off-peak hours. So if it's night, if it's the winter months when there's not as much traffic, you would feel that. So we can adjust signal timings to manage that as best we can, but there still would be delays associated with that. From a driver safety perspective, signals aren't necessarily, they're not seen as a safety feature just because they still allow critical crashes such as right angle crashes, left turn crashes. Those life-altering ones can still occur at an intersection like this, and a signal just introduces variability where people thrive on consistency, right? If they know what the condition is, they can handle it. If you introduce a stoplight and you have red, yellow, green indications and people going through at different times, that's when you get rear-end crashes and things like that, and that's what you commonly see at these signals when you introduce added traffic control compared to the existing condition. From a pedestrian perspective, pedestrian safety, the nice thing is it does provide a dedicated movement, so someone can press that button, light can be activated, they can cross the road safely. For us to continue to function and operate the signal efficiently, we likely would do the flashing yellow arrows if you've seen those before, and people would be taking a right turn on red as well at times. So even though a pedestrian does have that dedicated movement, there are still permitted kind of movements that occur at that same time that can not be as expected and can create safety issues as well, especially in a high traffic area like this when we're expecting a good amount of pedestrians to cross the intersection. And then from a noise perspective, I think we just want to be cognizant of that with this being next to a trail or next to the campground. A signal would have additional start and stops, and idling, just because if you look at today's condition, all the traffic goes through, the side street stops and then pulls on, but the majority of traffic just continues through. If you were to introduce a signal, you would have additional stop and starts, you would have additional idling, things like that. And then from a lighting perspective, there's currently one light at the intersection, so we'd introduce a second, third, or fourth light to the intersection just to brighten it up and make it a safer environment for pedestrians and vehicles to get through. And talking through the roundabout, so the geometric improvements, so as you can see, we are expecting minimal impacts to the existing environment, so this is still very much a concept design. But I guess it's a good starting point. And we feel that something similar to this could be achieved, but it still will need refinement if it does move forward into preliminary and final design. So with this one, so the previous design speed of that through movement was 36, 37, whatever people want to drive. The design speed of a roundabout's 20 to 25 miles per hour. So it really does a nice job of slowing people down. And as we talk about being a checkpoint or a transition point between the rural and the suburban, urban area, it would do a very nice job of having people enter into town and slow down before they get into that main drag of Cross Lake and traveling through there. So it would benefit the actual intersection itself from lower speeds, but also the corridor to the north where you may have people crossing at mid-block locations throughout. From an operations perspective, again, it's expected to operate efficiently. I think you're gonna find that's a consistent theme between all of these. The roundabout capacity, I know you can't see that little figure there, but at a high level, capacity of a roundabout's typically 25,000 entering vehicles per day. During our Labor Day traffic period that we analyzed, that was about 12,000. So the roundabout would still have significant capacity to accommodate any additional pedestrian movements that travel through the intersection with the opening of NLC, any additional traffic generated by the NLC. So it just has some nice capacity to do that. Another benefit of the roundabout too is during those off-peak conditions, we talked about stopping at the red light when nobody else is coming. That's not an issue at a roundabout. I know you've all driven them, but it's nice. It's a continuous flow intersection. So if there isn't someone else coming, you can continue through the intersection, just keep moving, which is nice during the off-peak conditions. From a safety perspective, roundabouts are expected, they are safer than signals as well. So compared to a signal, you'd expect a 37% reduction in normal crashes and about 80% reduction in severe crashes. And they're all low speed, low severity crashes typically, where it's just property damage. It's the weaving movements, things like that. So it just really removes a lot of the risk from the intersection. From a noise perspective, again, far less idling because people just continue through the intersection, but there would be additional lighting just because it is more of a complex geometry. And I will note here, it's on the board as well, but this is the recommended technical alternative, just from what we've seen and what we observed and what the intent in the future conditions at the intersection will be with the added pedestrian traffic and the benefits of reducing speeds. This is where the signal lane roundabout's the recommendation. And I just want to dig in a little bit more to that pedestrian piece of it. So in comparing, I'd say the two primary alternatives of the signal and the roundabout. For the signal, the initial familiarity. I know roundabouts can maybe not be as favorable as a signal in some situations for some folks. So that could just be a familiarity of how you drive an intersection, how a pedestrian uses an intersection could be favored from a signal perspective. I do want to hit on the conflict points and a little technical, but if you look at the bottom right figure here, it just shows, if you see all the dots, so a conflict point is really any time a driver or a vehicle interacts with a pedestrian or when a vehicle interacts with another vehicle. And whenever you have that, you have an opportunity for a crash when two paths cross. And a signal or a conventional intersection has 32 vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points. So that's when just really every crossing movement, every through movement, anytime something interacts. So a conventional intersection has 32 vehicle-to-vehicle and 24 vehicle-to-pedestrian conflict points, where a roundabout has only 8 of each. So there's 75% vehicle-to-vehicle, 75% less vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points, and about 67% less pedestrian-to-vehicle. So overall, it's just less vehicle interactions, which helps to improve safety. Driver speed, I mentioned that as well. Roundabout design speed's 20 to 25 miles per hour. The signal would probably maintain that 35 to 37 miles per hour through the intersection. And just with overall impacts of crashes at higher speed, again, it's kind of small, but that top right figure shows that at 20 miles per hour, if a pedestrian is hit, there's a 13% chance of a life-altering crash for a severe or fatal crash. If you're looking at that 35, so somewhere between 30 and 40 miles per hour, you're between a 40% and a 73% chance or likelihood of a fatal or severe crash. So really lowering the driver's speed is a huge factor in improving pedestrian safety. Ped wait times is another one. So just with the signal, you have to go up and press the button and essentially wait for that timing to be activated for you to cross the intersection. At a roundabout, you essentially just need to make eye contact with the driver, make sure that gap is there. So I'll expand on that a little bit. So with the roundabout, and I know, so with a roundabout, you are only crossing one direction of traffic at a time. So as you cross so if you currently cross that 60-foot swath on the north leg of the intersection now, you're exposed for that 60 feet, and there's left turners, there's through movements, there's right turners, there's traffic coming the other direction, there's left and right turners from the side street that can all impact how you cross that intersection. With a roundabout, you approach it from the ped ramp or the side of the road. You look a single direction to make sure that person stops. Once you identify that person stops, you enter the road and you cross. At that point, you're safely protected within that center median, and you look the other direction. You wait for a car to approach, you make sure they stop, and you cross that leg of the intersection. So it's a safe two-stage crossing. There's no getting hung out to dry in the middle of the intersection, and it's slower speeds. So while there may be some non-compliance, it's on both the driver and the pedestrian to recognize when a safe movement is there to cross the intersection. The driver line of sight also is just, it maintains, if someone approaches a roundabout, it just maintains your eye level. You don't have to look up at a traffic signal and back down at a pedestrian. You're always looking forward, and you're always just looking for that interaction between the pedestrian and the driver. And then driver decision-making. So both things, I think there is some concerns with driver decision-making in a roundabout from a pedestrian perspective. But a lot of that happens at a signal too, with those permissive left turn movements, the right turn on reds. Whenever there isn't a defined movement, there causes conflict. So both of those positives and negatives with you both. So just getting into the next steps then in public engagement. So yeah, check out the project website. And I know Tim mentioned that with the input ID and being able to provide comments on there. Sign up for mailing lists if you provide your contact information as part of either the comments or the sign-in sheet. You can get added to that. And then, yeah, talk to the folks around the room. Happy to hear and have discussions on whatever your thoughts are on the recommendation or really anything with the intersection. So our next steps then, as I mentioned, we are still in the study phase and just getting through that initial analysis, and wanted to have a conversation with the public here before proceeding into design. So, I don't know, Tim, if you have anything else or anything I missed?
Well, I could answer a bunch of questions, but I don't know.
That was quick, so yeah, happy to. I don't know.
I don't know if you mentioned this is one of, at least we're gonna have another public meeting like this, maybe even another one, we'll see how it goes, to show. These are just concepts right now, there's a lot of tweaking to do on anything. Come up with, show that to you. I just want it all to be glazed over, that your recommendation based on the traffic analysis is what?
A roundabout.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Jake Bongard from
Bolton and Mank. Yeah.
No, no. No,
Can I ask a question? Please?
absolutely.
Thanks.
It's impossible not to, just, we want to.
Okay. I want to go back to the four-way stop.
Yeah.
If you go back to that slide where you said that it was not an approved thing or an okay thing, it seems to me like your number one reason why the four-way stop does not meet project goals is because people are used to not stopping there.
attention, it really comes down to pedestrian safety. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. For those online, I'm sorry, online folks that couldn't hear me. One of the things that was talked about was pedestrian safety. I think what you heard Jake say is that all of these alternatives could work, right?
Yeah.
But we're concerned about the pedestrians that are already there, and then that, and those that, I can touch on that in a second. In the roundabouts, and it's almost counterintuitive, and it was to me, after I read a lot of statistics and a lot of literature on roundabouts and pedestrian safety, is that the roundabouts are actually safer for pedestrians than signals by 40%. By 40%. Who would, by 40%, that surprised me. It's counterintuitive because we stop for pedestrians, right? But roundabouts, we encourage people to keep going. It's counterintuitive, I would agree. When I was reading the statistics on it, that it's actually safer statistically for pedestrians to only cross one lane of traffic at a time, and for drivers to pay attention to less things than a signal. I was surprised by it too. So if we're really truly concerned about pedestrians, and that's why I started all this conversation with the Loon Center, with the people coming to this town, more people, more pedestrians, is pedestrian safety. So traffic, all things will work. We want to choose the one that's best for pedestrians and can handle traffic.
What are the pedestrian islands you're talking about? That's something they gotta walk up on?
No.
If they're handicapped or elderly or something?
No, that's a great point. Jake, where is that on this one? Do you have the roundabout?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
It's what we call the splitter island. So I'm gonna point right here. These are crosswalks. So this little area right there, it's a raised median, might have straight up curb or might have mountable curb. That's the detail that we can get into. The pedestrian actually does the two-stage crossing. So this 16 feet maybe, where the car will be, you take refuge here, if another car's coming, and then you go across.
Tim, why
That's a
just
pose.
put a median in the middle with a stop sign, four-way stop on the median?
Then you have 75, well, somebody asked me about that. And so by introducing a median like that in the middle of the road, now you're increasing that width even farther. Now you're
You're dividing it in half.
You're-
Because you have a median in the middle, you have stop signs on the median, and you have stop signs on the.
but you still have a right turn lane, a through lane, a left turn lane, a through lane, and a right turn lane again.
But
And
with
so,
all the stop signs in the median there, you've got high visibility right there. Another thing I want you to address before we end is with the roundabout, how many streetlights have to go up to light up that roundabout?
there are quite a few. There are quite a few, more than a signal. However, they can be directional, meaning you can point them. There's a lot of technology behind illumination of streets and things like that. And so that can be directional to reduce the light pollution. Okay, here we go. Excuse me?
How are you gonna educate the public on that? You've got people that don't live here, how are you gonna do that? I think you're still in trouble with
The statistics show otherwise.
Real quick, where is the parking for the Loon Center going to be?
The parking,
It's been suggested that in the summer months, when the school is not in session, that parking would be at the school, which would put your pedestrian traffic 2 blocks north of where your proposed roundabout.
the parking, we're not sure where the parking is. There's parking all over. But the parking,
Wouldn't that be information you would need to know prior to
well, where it's coming from.
a decision like this?
Well, we'll be providing pedestrian accommodations farther on the corridor too. Right now, we're focusing on the intersection. I mean, this is the elephant in the room. Everybody is here, not because we're gonna put sidewalks along. Right, so we need to figure this out first. And so, and then the other pedestrian accommodations that Jake mentioned along County Road 3, and then up to 66, up to Bald Eagle Trail, are another element. But we really need to address this first.
The Loon Center has begun discussions with school.
Okay.
They are encouraging us. They have
I have heard talk of that. I just know that there's gonna be limited availability for parking for Loon Center patrons on the site. Oh, boy.
What is the construction of the middle gonna be, that circle, the green circle? Is that gonna be elevated like the one on Wise Road that you can't see across if you're a pedestrian?
It is elevated. This one will have a vegetated center. Some smaller ones don't.
You won't be able to see across?
No.
I have a question. I know the city council, what I was told by you, it's gonna be their decision to vote on this, correct? That's what you told me. Is that
This,
still correct?
the city council is a data point. It will be the county board that makes the decision.
You told me it was the city council that made this decision.
It's a data point. These are two county roads.
Okay,
I remember the conversation.
yes, I'm glad you did. Another question is, why can't this be voted on by the citizens across like the pay taxes? A special road. What, don't we have a say so?
You have a through your council and your elected officials at the county board.
So you just told us that it doesn't matter how they vote, you guys will decide, is that correct?
Well, the county board will decide.
The county board will decide.
With input, the city council, the city council has a great deal of say. And so they need to make sure that their county commissioner is aware of their, and so they're here, I mean, the commissioner, the current commissioner and the future commissioner are both here listening tonight.
So your taxes then, if we're looking at city, county, state monies, is there federal monies that we use?
It's actually, currently, we have $1.46 million worth of federal money. There will be requirement for some local participation. And that includes the county, maybe the city.
Probably county, state aid.
Could be, it could be. Okay,
I live on the Pine River. I'm concerned about wastewater runoff and how you're gonna make it cleaner.
there's already been plans, even before the money was secured, and we've really taken this to the next step, is to do some water quality improvements for both the Pine River and the Whitefish chain.
Tell me that. What are you gonna do? What improvements are gonna be made to clean that water up?
I don't know if I can speak to that, but I'm just gonna, in high terms, I know that Bolton Mink was also working on that even before really talking about the intersection improvements.
Talked about it in
So-
some of your articles in the news. So you can't talk about it now?
No, I am, it's gonna be separate, like mechanically separating some of the solids and those kind of things.
What are you gonna put in there to treat those solids?
It could be mechanical separation.
Those are heavy metals when they clean up in the.
Can you help me out? Exactly. I wasn't involved with the actual engineering with it. There have been plans, depending on which alternative is chosen, it might provide an enhanced opportunity to collect more water, treat it before it eventually does go to the Pine River.
Collect it by gallon pail. There's no room over there to collect it. Where does it go now?
It probably goes directly in, and that's exactly what we're trying to change.
You said, no, it doesn't. I talked to you earlier. You said, no, it doesn't. All of those heavy metals have been going into that river for quite some time. When the river level is down, that smells like a swamp down there.
Well, I'm happy to report that we are gonna do something about that with this. We're gonna create ponding and mechanical separation to get some of the solids out.
Sumps and all those catch basins?
I don't know, we can talk offline, and I can expand if you like.
This is a critical factor. You talk about improving it before you go to improve it. You must haven't talked about it because you
We've-
talked about it in the paper.
We've talked about it, and it will be incorporated in this project.
I'm a biker. One on the stoplight thing, just, it sounds like you're talking about narrowing that, if that was an option. I'm a biker, please don't do that. I understand pedestrian safety, but you narrow that up, that's gonna be really nerve-wracking for me. Also, walk me through how a biker goes through, goes straight north on 3, or goes from 3 south. And talk about conflict points. My gut's just tightening up thinking about how I negotiate that. The person that, if you say it's through, they think they can keep going, and so the person that's going north on 3 decides to go to the right, and I'm biking along there. How am I safe going through that? I just don't have the concept. I'd love to have somebody explain that. Because
I wasn't following the movements like north on 3, but in general, I know hardcore road bikers do not like to use the sidewalks. But that is an option for those that aren't. There's sidewalks, there'll be sidewalks incorporated with this. Oh, on the signal? You're talking about the signal and the roundabout?
I'm talking about the roundabout.
Okay.
Just south of there, I didn't see anything that said sidewalks just south. You're talking north of it, yes, on the east side.
This right here is pedestrian way. And this pedestrian way, and this is the trail will continue on.
Yeah,
And we're proposing a sidewalk up that way.
right, and I'll just mention too, this is a concept design, and it would be easy, so on that south leg, to extend that sidewalk, to provide a slip ramp for bikers to come off the shoulder and onto the pedestrian facilities. This is still a concept, so those elements
There's a
could be
lot of
added.
that.
So, of all the things you have out here, there's not one blank comment, and so I would just, I
Yeah.
appreciate that being incorporated, and then send me an instruction sheet on how you.
So I just wanna, for the hardcore bikers that really like to stay on the road, and I was reading this and watching this when I was investigating, was that they're encouraged to use the roundabout as a car would. And I know a lot of hardcore bikers do that and prefer that. So it depends on how you use your bike. Next question.
It's my turn.
Yeah, sir.
I think you can see the opposition to what you presented to everyone in the audience here. And I think your 4 solutions are real short-sighted. I think they're maybe gonna be good for 10 years. What you gotta do is go back to the drawing board and come up with solutions that are not for the near future, but the real future, in order to, make sure it's not gonna make negative impacts with what you're doing. You don't even know if the Loon Center is gonna succeed. It might be gone in 2 years if nobody appreciates the Loon Center. Then what do you do? There's a lot of other solutions that you haven't explored. You guys need routing some of the traffic out of town rather than go through those. Routing it in 2 locations as opposed to 1 location. There's multiple solutions that have been brought out, but it's not our job to design them. It's these guys, they're the professionals. Well, I'm just telling them that what they presented does not appear that it's gonna succeed. We gotta come up with something better.
Well, I feel fortunate, just quickly to that point, I feel very fortunate, and it isn't very often in my business or our business that we can be in front of a problem. A lot of times we're reactive. I tell you, I was part of the Minnesota design team when the Loon Center concept was mentioned. And my engineering brain and traffic and engineering brain's going, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a traffic and pedestrian problem, what are we gonna do? That's where I went to. And so I feel fortunate that we are ahead of it. Yes, you're right, it's not done till it's done, right? I don't know if John's here, but we have to assume it's gonna be there. Otherwise, we're going to be waiting for something to happen, and then this room will be just as full and just as upset that we didn't do it already.
Has there been roundabout as opposed to putting in semaphore?
They're comparable. I just want to say that. It depends. Urban ones, that can be more expensive when you have the side roads that are curb and gutter. The one on Wise Road, for example, that everybody, it's rural and big, was 1.1 million.
So what is ours gonna cost us,
I'd say around that.
as opposed to semaphore lights?
It depends who you talk to. There was a gentleman that stood up here and said,
You don't. I'm not talking to anyone else.
Does that include the engineering cost of $400,000?
Then all the
No.
electric in the ground right now.
no, it doesn't.
The real cost is not 1.
Right, that is construction. Thank you for the clarification. That's correct. That's right.
What's the largest RV you guys are factoring in?
That's a good point. I know that on one of these boards, or a few of this information around here, turning count or turning movements are very important. A lot of the comments, not only just this project, this roundabout, not even just roundabouts, people are concerned about the size of vehicles and can the geometrics of the intersection handle it. So right now, we used, or Jake and his team used a 30-foot RV pulling a boat. And we also ran turning movements. When I say by turning movement, what? Motorized RV.
Okay, how about a 30-foot
Excuse me.
A lot of states come up here and want to get into that campground.
Yep.
With that roundabout, it's going to block traffic all the way around it when you've got a vehicle that big.
These,
Your triple tow with a fifth wheel is gonna be, in most cases, about 80.
right. Well, yeah.
Even
The
though
state law is 70.
The state limit's 75.
Right,
but
understand.
Good luck finding limits within that.
Right. That's true. We're trying to model it, and when we're modeling, it's the off-tracking. So, a boat doesn't follow immediately behind a car or a truck. It's the off-tracking, meaning the footprint's wider.
Now compare
Of the-
that to a 15-foot semi.
So what we tried to do is model the 30-foot camper with a boat, and it's not the same off-tracking, but we felt that the worst-case scenario for off-tracking was the large semi, a WB 63. 62, so 45-foot long trailer behind it. And so we looked at the off-tracking for that, and maybe he can jump in. So we're trying to make, and we won't design something that won't accommodate that. So if it doesn't accommodate that, we won't build it. So we are looking, and there's some models up here that actually show the off-tracking. We are paying attention to that. And so we will make sure that they can make that. It's a little bit difficult to model. We're looking for those models for what they call triple tow. I think, I don't know for sure. There's a lot of people going in there, and we recognize that. It's all over in the comments, and we fully understand that. We want to show you that it will work. We would not design something where vehicles could not get in there.
What about the dock lifts? That's what I think of. Is the dock lifts going through there? They teeter on those already when they're going around. What makes them not gonna fall over when they go around it?
They might have to be careful. I hope that because of dock lifts is not the reason we're not building the safest thing we can.
And another problem is signs along motorhomes and stuff. You've got a lumberyard up front here that drives down and hauls rafters as well. Is he gonna be able to make it around that at the same time we're following a rig out of the campgrounds? Those two drivers have to be able to see each other and anticipate what's gonna happen. Then you've got a pedestrian walking around. Put traffic signals up.
Okay, this gentleman back here in the orange, right there, has had a question, hand up for a long time. The question was, he was concerned about a semi-trailer 65 feet long, able to accommodate these.
I mean, that's the entrance to the arms part.
Understand? We're doing the modeling to show that it does work. And it is a common thing. It's a common thing when we design roundabouts and other intersections to make sure that vehicles can take it. Now, certainly, there's a vehicle out there that is not going to make it. I've seen models of a windmill turbine blade. That probably not going to make it through here. But hopefully, the people doing that work find an alternate route where it will make it. We can accommodate every possible thing.
Do you have an idea how much weight the council will have on the ultimate decision?
It's a data point to be considered by the county board.
I know, but how much weight does that?
I can't speak for the commissioners. They're here. I encourage you to talk with them.
I play devil's advocate here with the elephant man. This all has, we're having this discussion about this roundabout partially because of the Loon Center and the amount of traffic that's coming in. If a business builds a building and opens, they have to have a certain number of parking areas for their business. A restaurant, any business. We just allowed the Loon Center to come in and build something, they're talking about huge numbers of people with no parking? What are we thinking? And now we're trying to react and fix a road, but we don't even know where the heck all these cars are gonna go.
I can't answer that question. I'm sorry. I mean, I can't answer that question, only that I'm responsible to make sure that when the traffic does come, and regardless of whether there's enough parking or not, that you are all, and we are all safe. And that's what I'm trying to do. This is my job. It's my responsibility to see through this. That decision was not mine. And do you understand that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
2 years ago, we all got voted
Okay.
on this deal.
How does this roundabout size compare to what's on Wise Road and the ones on, Glenway?
It's smaller.
College Drive and that?
On College Drive, it might, I don't know, but the one on Wise Road is larger than this, for sure. Usually, the larger, the better, because of the vehicle's consideration. Yes, sir. Are we okay with, just one second, anybody online? You okay with it? Who has not heard the presentation? So we got like 4 or 5 people. We'd be happy to stay behind if you would allow us to continue to answer questions. Is that okay? Those who have not heard the presentation? Jake, you okay with that? 100%. Okay, yep, I'll get to you next. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Make sure that we are recording this too, so they can watch the presentation if they have
Yes, that's, and those, just speaking now, we're doing question and answer. Those of you online, if you have a question you'd like answered, please type it in the chat. I'm going to get to this gentleman right here.
I heard the county is getting a grant, right?
Federal money has been allocated to
What
this.
would you put in if the county had to pay for it? You put in stoplights.
That's a great,
Everybody thinks it's free money. It ain't free money, you know that.
I wouldn't be so sure.
People in the county.
I know, so this intersection's been talked about even before the Loon Center was coming in, and I think one of the concepts that was talked about then was the use of a roundabout. The county is utilizing roundabouts in a number of locations. You're gonna see a number of them show up on the County Road 3 corridor starting probably in 2026. Well, I'm sorry, you're gonna see one just south of town at 3 and 11 next year. And then 3 and 4, there's gonna be one. And there's this corridor, this arterial is being managed with corridors. So, okay. Did I answer your question? Excuse me. Okay, I was saying that we would likely be looking at a roundabout at that intersection. When we were talking about it way before even I want to say even before the Loon Center concept was finalized and things.
And you made mention that signal lights cannot be activated or deactivated at the flip of a switch. I'm not.
I'll clarify.
Thanks.
It's physically possible. But to make that investment and to only use it for 9 months of the year is not going to be acceptable to the county.
No, we're not that impatient. We can do it year-round.
Year-round. It would be on year-round. The requirement would be to be on year-round. I can't,
There are sensors that you can install that would trigger that light. If nobody's there, the light changes. I know they have those.
they certainly have those.
So what's wrong with those? That's what they have.
That'd be at any signal nowadays, smart or intelligent traffic systems. What's that?
By default.
Yeah, that's, there's hardly any that are just simply timed anymore. It's on for 5 minutes and it's off for 5 minutes. They're all smart and have sensors. I'll keep going. Just-
Have you considered a bike and head overpass bridge?
Yeah, okay, thank you for bringing that back up again. We have not formally considered that, but there's just not room for that. Think about how high up you would have to get and how far back off these properties you would have to get for that to work. The pigtails, you may have seen these down in the cities where it's a ramp that goes around in a big circle with straight up. People don't use those. You're still,
20 years ago, and it was, there is documentation somewhere, because about 20 years ago, a bridge concept was looked at, and at that intersection, the far side of the bridge would be past Judy's House of Gifts. Because the ADA requirements.
Yep.
And the slope and everything else. And then think about it going into the campground the other way.
that's what I mean. And so we didn't formally look at it, but we get the requests a lot. And so in a lot of different situations, they take up a lot of room that we don't have. Now, somebody said a tunnel.
Can I just say something?
Oh, sure.
I was on the council in a suburban Minneapolis. We had $3 million to build a pedestrian bridge. It came in 50% higher than that, and this is about 8 years ago. So it was about $4.5 million to build a pedestrian bridge by ramp. I don't see us having the money to do that.
I think another thing about that is they're expensive, but they take up a lot of room. But if they're not convenient, people won't use them. And if there could be a bridge right there, and if there isn't a fence to make them use it, they're gonna come across 66 anyway. And now we've invested all this money, and they're not likely to use it. That's just coming from experience and, having talked about these for 20 years. Okay, this gentleman first, Cindy. Yes.
All this presentation here, what I get out of it is that we're organizing steps and putting around it. It's all smoke and mirrors. Everything is smoke and mirrors. You're doing this presentation, it's smoke and mirrors. You're gonna do what the hell you're gonna do.
We're looking,
That's what I'm saying. You know what? How many accidents have we had at that intersection? Not very damn many. Just the way it is. And if we improve it, it'll be better. So this roundabout is BS, as far as I'm concerned. I'm saying what I'm saying. Okay, I'm done. It's like bullshit. I worked for the government for 31 years. When we had money, it was burning a hole in our pockets. That's the problem. It's burning a hole in your pocket. You need to spend it.
as I mentioned before, I feel very fortunate that we're in front of a potential problem. It doesn't happen. So one of my pet peeves, if I can take a second to share with you, is the comment, how many people have to die before you do something? I hate that. I hate it more than anything. The answer is 0. 0, 0, 0. I don't want to be here 4 years from now after somebody has died because there's a lot of pedestrians, again, in the same room, same crowd, asking me why I didn't do anything. I feel very fortunate. Yes, we have the money. A lot of times, we don't have the money. And so I feel very fortunate.
Is that called fear factor? Is that what fear, you instill fear in people, and then we gotta put it in?
It's my responsibility.
That's my personal opinion.
It's my responsibility to do it, and it'd be irresponsible to not address a problem. And that's why we're here. Cindy was patient. Cindy.
So a lot of the concern is about pedestrians, which is my concern.
Mhm.
For years, I sit in the chamber office right on that corner and I hear that near misses often, the screeching. I was going to Brainerd last winter at that roundabout by the DMV, and it was snowy and icy. There was 14 cars piled up in that roundabout. It was a disastrous mess. So I'm nervous about this in the winter, very, very nervous about this in the winter. I want to go back to Chad's suggestion about the four-way stop signs and the medians in the road, and maybe the bump outs. There's a lot of land between those two different sides of the road. You're narrowing the lanes anyway. We're gonna put in a sidewalk. This thing says single lane roundabout recommended technical alternative. To this gentleman's point, is this your recommendation to the council? Are you going to take any of this feedback? Are you going to revisit four-way stops? Is this gonna be what it is? What is that timeline? How is that decision gonna factor into the next public?
We're taking public input. We'll look at the four-way stop. But what I would,
Talk about it here in Cross Lake, and nobody's gonna like it. And it's gonna be on you, buddy. You don't care.
Dealers, it would solve the problem.
You don't care.
The wind turbine could actually drive right through Cross Lake.
It's gonna change the whole complexion of this town. Change the
If
whole
we do a
complexion
vote,
of Cross
if we
Lake.
do a vote as to who's in favor of this, who's in favor of the four-way stop, who's in favor of the stoplight? Show of hands.
Either one.
Let the county run the meeting. They don't care. Your days are running the meeting.
Just out of curiosity. I'm just wondering about the timeline.
so why wouldn't we build the thing that's the safest? Why wouldn't we build the thing that is the safest? Why wouldn't we invest in the thing that's the safest? You don't want the safest thing.
Longer than a roundabout.
Okay.
All these people were, drivers had went through similar.
This gentleman's been patiently waiting.
Council meeting, you said if we do a stoplight or stop sign 60 feet across, and if you do a roundabout, there's two 16-foot areas for the pedestrian to cross. So if I'm a pedestrian, I want to go across a 60-foot area when the cars are stopped because there's a light or something, rather than trying to make my way across the roundabout where they don't have to stop. There's two 16-foot areas. I want a stoplight, I feel safer crossing. I don't understand where you say, getting one 260 crossing and 160. I just don't understand.
Jake talked about the conflict points that are, so there's a number of different, it's right turn lanes, it's left turn lanes, it's through lanes that have all the potential to hit you as you're walking across. And so those conflict points are much reduced at the roundabout when you're only crossing one lane of traffic. That,
Can you tell us that at the next meeting, and I'm just gonna encourage everybody to please be respectful here. At the next meeting, public meeting, can you tell us that you will look at the four-way stop and the possible signage it would take to make people more aware of the four-way stop coming up? And what you're gonna analyze about that? Can you tell us that you'll bring it to the next public?
well, no, excuse me. Where I'm going with that is that we need to start bringing it to the next level for consideration. We will consider, the next public meeting is not scheduled right now until May, and that's why I'm kind of like, okay.
I go to every city council meeting.
Okay.
And I go to all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And these public meetings are extremely important and
Agreed.
beneficial.
Agreed.
But
Okay. Okay. Like a public meeting, can we present at a city council meeting? The findings at a city council meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you consider on those crosswalks, a wheelchair victim is going to egress and exit those?
At all crossings.
In a wheelchair?
At all crossings, the requirement is that we meet what they call Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. That means those are the curb ramps where the curb drops down, the plate with the bumps on it for those who are hearing about it. They will be there part of this too. So wheelchairs and those that are physically impaired will be able to navigate those. This gentleman had a question. I'm sorry. Sometimes. So one of the benefits of this is it's physically impossible to go too fast in these without losing control. They're designed.
That's only right there. Pedestrian traffic starts about there, about the bridge. It goes all the way up to, all the way to town.
Yep.
It's 35, and it goes back to
Right.
35.
Mm.
Even school, I thought school was here supposed to
The traffic study was just done in this section, and what came back is 35. Through the roundabout, because that's how they're designed. That's how they're designed. I'm not following. Yeah, thanks. Right.
The analysis that we did, so we collected speed data, and that showed that people were driving 36, 37 miles per hour through the intersection. So by providing a roundabout, you slow the speeds to 20 to 25 miles per hour. And it's proven that if you just change a speed limit sign, people drive what they're comfortable driving. So a speed limit sign may help reduce speeds, but oftentimes it doesn't. People just drive what they're comfortable. So by physically putting in a roundabout and designing the road so people only can go 20 to 25, it will slow traffic as opposed to just people driving straight through an intersection with a speed limit sign up.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you're right here. Yes, agreed.
Thank you for letting us speak. I do want to say I'm a little offended at the condescension that if we're not for the roundabout, that means we're going to let people die in the intersection. I don't think that's what anyone here wants. I don't accept the premise that it's either roundabout or nothing. In Walker, for years, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 years, they put square four-way signs right in the middle of the intersection. So you had to go around the stop sign. That was their test. It probably cost them $200 an intersection to put a four-way sign in the middle to see. And then they ended up putting lights at those intersections. But they didn't light anything, they didn't change anything, and I'm sure they have about 10 times the traffic that we do in Cross Lake. And they have lights. And for years, they had a pole in the middle of the intersection.
I just want to address your first thing. That is not what I was saying, is that I feel that somebody has to die. I was pointing out that I feel very happy that we're ahead of it.
You said you don't want to save this thing, and then you looked over there and laughed.
You misread me, I'm sorry. This is not a joking matter, at all, at all. I take my job very seriously, and it's my responsibility.
But I want you to know, you're not choosing to let people die. We're just thinking this is overkill for our town.
Okay, thank you. Tom, did you have something? Oh, sorry.
He's got a question, if you did do the roundabout, how it would affect Riverwood Trail? And then my question is, looking at the roundabout, am I seeing that that wouldn't have any impact on parking?
The first question is it Riverwood Court? Is that Riverwood Court, for those not familiar? Riverwood Court is a number of townhomes down here. And there's a couple of gentlemen here, this gentleman and other, excuse me, that live down there and have been asking about, would that be restrictive for them down there? And so an earlier concept actually showed where that'd be cut off. And we've also said that this is a concept. There's a lot of work to be done on any of these alternatives. We are just showing the concept. And so any improvement to that, we would certainly look at that to see if that could be improved. I'm sorry.
You got 66 here. That's County Road 3. 66 starts here. You can't even make a back break. We got 24 families down there in Riverwood. If you're gonna block off only one way out of there.
From the concept that was early on, we've shown it.
Know that there's 24 families down there because unless you live there, there's no reason to come. But you made this map backwards. How do we know the rest of it isn't going to be backwards?
Yeah, I apologize.
Is that wrong?
No, we saw that on the boards and we changed it in the presentation.
Oh, okay. It's not right there. Okay, got it. Because it's right there. It's right on that one. Okay, right here. Please.
My question is, you mentioned the input that the Cross Lake City Council would have as far as making the ultimate decision and stuff. What are the other main factors and proponents that would be involved in that situation as far as making that decision? In other words, like the county, who else would provide input that'll help make that decision, and what kind of weight do they have?
I think your first part, I think you said that the city council had the ultimate decision-making authority. It's the county board that has the.
No, I didn't indicate that.
Okay.
I said the Cross Lake City Council, how does their decision, if they come up with one, or recommendation, how does that impact the final decision that's going to be made? And who has that ultimate power? Is that the county?
The county board. And so.
What kind of weight would a decision
I can't.
coming out of here have?
I can't speak for the county commissioner in which would receive input, either formal resolution or something from the city. I'm not sure. I can't speak for him. I will also have input, of course. My job is to inform the elected officials, and they don't always take my recommendation.
Will you weigh the opinions of the Cross Lake community?
That will come through your city council. And they are here also. And so they will hear that too.
Can we talk to them?
Are you going to do a second presentation? There's people here that came.
Who's here for a second presentation? We took a few extra minutes to answer questions, and at that time, there's only like 2 or 3 people. So we want to get into the. Yeah, who here is for the second presentation? How many? 4? Are you willing to stay behind for just a little bit so we can answer more questions?
I just want to butt in on you, Tim, a little bit too. We obviously got to talk more about this. So if it's a town hall, whatever it's going to be, there's going to be some more forums, and we will invite these guys back. Your voice is very important. How much does the council weigh? Depends how much we want to argue about it. We got a future commissioner back there and we got a past commissioner back there. They're listening to you, and that's a good thing. So voice your opinion, and we'll get it right. But we're not going to be able to cover it tonight. You know, I don't want to cut anybody off. So.
No, that's fine. Okay, are we got any more questions?
I'm one of the property owners on Riverwood Court. About my property value. Your answer was what? Not necessarily. Possibly. Property values will not go up because of that problem.
There's actually 2 grants. The question was, when do these federal grants expire? The first one for the pedestrian improvements, not the intersection, 2026, 2027. The one for the intersection, the expectation is to spend it in 2024. That's the expectation, is to spend it by then. Well, it's hard to say because we always can apply for extensions and things like that. Right now, the expectation is for us to get it done in 2024.
How many county commissioners are there?
5.
Is it a majority vote or is it
It's a simple majority for almost everything. There are some exceptions, but not this. Right, they're sitting in the back right now. Well, the commissioner for this district is only represented tonight. Okay. Any other questions or comments? TJ, is there anything online? Okay. Okay.